It's Thursday, October 20th, 2022. My health update. I was at the hospital yesterday. I have to call for a histogram today, sonohistogram. Um, don't know what that means. Um, but it has to do something with hemo, HEMO. Um, on the paper they gave me, the hematocrit was in the 13 range, which looked okay. But I'm concerned. I'm in this flag pattern. Um, and this morning I woke up with a um, cognitive, almost like the ringing of a bell, um, just national treasure. National treasure. And if national treasure is what God considers me, because all of the signs are with me in this particular place that I was. I saw some frightening things, which I'm not bringing to light at the moment, on the television about other areas, in what I call the great beyond, because it's not just Great Britain, it's great beyond. It's if I'm the national treasure for New York City or New York, state of New York, which is where my extra special birthing certificate or commune certificate, because that's what they say in Italy. Um, but it is the word for birthplace of something. And in the natural world, here, we call it birth certificate. So I had a very special looking, it goes with Hollywood, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory certificate, which is unlike all of the rest of the birth certificates for this area. It was special paper, it was a special look, and not all of the children had that level of paper assigned them. Um, so, with that being said, at National Treasure, the green linen, the past presidency, the incoming history, the current history that's still taught, um, the ancestry, the heraldry of this local area, the region, and then how that relates to global. Now, in global invention of history in my local area, whether it's true or not, I'm not sure, but at National Treasure, it's incredibly important between the word the call sign Nicholas and the call sign Alexi, being that I'm Nicole, being that I have an Alexander, being that there is the last czar and there is the last supper. There is much significance in the LAS, las, for which in some areas they say Sheila, in some areas they say las, in some areas they say girl. Just so family, country, and God is having a correct big brother to the correct father conversation, if this ever so needs to get from National Treasure, is having trouble in the field. So the invention that BBC put together, with the last czar of Russia being Nicholas II, and I being in a territory that has a Saint Nicholas, I have performed miracles on calendar and on whatever else covered by church. So, and those being real, confirmable events in my human history. There's something, so in that invention of that history that they aired here, they said that Tsar Nicholas II himself had such an incredible love for his wife, who was, I think, Alexandria. And then it tells of their 5 children, the last child having hemophilia. Now, I currently, in my health status here, I was not born with hemophilia. I don't have a bleeding, I don't have a history of a bleeding problem. I don't have a history of anemia until until the third decade, when mysteriously the health paradigm in the area shifted, and then someone pronounced it, but I didn't know what it meant, and they didn't give me any medical direction for course correction. So, and that was hemophilia did not, anemia did not come into the picture until 1975 showed up as well. So the timing of that, when 1976, when I was with him, I did not have anemia. I had intermittent iron deficiency, but not anemia. I know that at National Treasure, for local, region, territory, and global, these are incredibly crucial points and features between the invention of history that follows along by call signs and whatnot, for being a National Treasure in the natural world, and a national treasure. And again, there's the ION on that one. So at EO. So I'm watching this commercial that they put on this morning, something called a United Healthcare Medical Plan. And it talks about mom not knowing which direction to go. And so she hires some health advisor. Now, it does not look like my mother. It does not look like anything my mother would have agreed to, my personal mother, Linda. But my mother had to have been some form of national treasure herself, especially since when I arrived, the Catholics and the Christians, everyone I've ever met with, spoke of some form of the word. There was a Holy Mother, and there was a special child. That's an ongoing historical reference to this modern era's domestic understanding that the region, the local, and other regions within the regional area, they've agreed and known about that there is a special mother and there's a special child. More than that, there's oil paintings of it. They usually refer, that pairing goes with European descent. And so I know that these are incredibly important. Now, for whatever reason, though, this morning, they're showing this United Healthcare Plan somewhere in some hole in time and space before I've had. They also show this morning, the NFL came out with something which I greatly appreciate. One of their employees, one of the famous ones from the field, I don't know what they call themselves. I don't know the position. I don't know how to appreciate him the way that, like, if a Brady Bunch representative was having this conversation, they could outline much better than myself. I, not having any idling or toiling or whatever, I don't have the same level of knowledge of anything that goes on in the NFL category, being that I'm national treasure and left out in the field and in this really, like, if you have a national treasure that the church and the government and the history before you arrived leading into your children's as a caretaker, how could you treat this child being myself so horribly. That's what I just don't understand. It so I'm seeing how this morning Parliament works, where there's somebody put in charge, and then there's this like floor that speaks. That's what fourth grade looked like. They put me in charge. I had to sign a letter, and then the fourth graders brought up their fourth grader concerns to my person, and I had ultimate say at the end of those conversations. That was in Miss Harrison's class, or Harrison, um, in Lloyd Harbor Elementary, and that was on signed special linen, special delivery paper to the door of the elementary school. Um, so at National Treasures, I mean, like, that's how significant and important. I mean, it's not a regular public school. I didn't claim that I went to a regular public school. I went to something that some people in the area have told me by way of making sure that they had access to Lewis, that they refer to it as an Ivy League, IVY, League Elementary or area, um, which I suppose is different than the state. I'm not quite sure how they at National Treasure and how they explain to one another. I'm not quite sure how that levels out. Um, but the stuff that went on in my later years, um, it's almost like the picture that they put up with Tua. His name's TUA, and I I don't know the sounds. I'll have to put it back on, but he says that he remembers very little of the events, and then he doesn't remember the events of being taken off the field, when after he was tackled and had the neurological whatever, and then that brought up the conversation of ataxia, about taking somebody out of the game. That's a really huge acknowledgement at NFL level of, is that what they did? I'm a national treasure. There is no game when it comes to my level of national treasure between global understanding, regional, and then the local area. I am not something to be gamed with, and like not at this level. That puts way too much power in the people's hands, and then it becomes a social crisis of what have they done, what are they trying to attempt, and so on and so forth. So this gets really, really dicey and tricky very fast, slippery slope. But here we are at United Healthcare plans of, what are they showing me this morning?
When it was time to sign up for a Medicare plan, Mom didn't know which way to turn. But thanks to the Right Plan Promise from United Healthcare, she got a Medicare plan expert to help guide her to the right plan.
I really don't know why this became the expert. Now, here's the thing. If we're talking about major alcohol distilleries, and then these large gas guzzling fumigation things, where there are some people on the face of this earth that don't drink at all. I would be one of them. I was never drinking. It was not, my parents didn't drink. They had a dry house. I was going to be a dry house. That's it. Um, but then things happened, and I met with a brother in the field, incredibly tall one, might I add, not against the brick wall, but behind in a field trip between the MVP and the VIP to try to have a conversation from his perspective and his level of knowledge of where his trajectory was sending him, and where, as a national treasure, I was already seated, which presented to him to look like a potential problem. So we are together in that one instance, and that is memorialized at National Treasure for life. because we were in the same room together. And there is real seriousness on what happens to me. So, at a Mary, a WED, the NES, and the day that we're there, DAY, and I being the THURS, in a very special ring. So, so this is the rest of this commercial. So anyway, so something's going on. I don't know what it is. They've now put out these vehicles. They produce this alcohol residue that burns. It causes health issues. It just does. It makes a lot of money. They've made a lot of money off of it. What they've done with the money, I have no idea. But now I'm stuck here. My life's been completely derailed. And I don't know what their portfolio managers, I mean, things I'm frightened of are the things that go bump in the night. And this, like, how do you sleep at night? Yeah, I don't know. I just stay awake long enough, and with my health being where I've been kept, I mean, it's like drinking, it's almost like consuming alcohol, but not orally through the nasopharynx and the lungs, but having no choice over it because that's what the environment in the area, with whatever's fight is going on between the large area distillers, the chemical companies, the pharmaceutical companies, and then the children who are like piranhas with a carcass being thrown into the water, trying to fight and hurry and just whatever, just eat all the meat and then just leave, and then all of a sudden you're like, that's all that's left are the bones, and then everybody just scatters looking for their next scavenger meal. That's what my life frame feels like at the moment. Not because I planned it that way, not because I wanted it that way, but because something outside or something inside National Treasury is not functioning properly at some point throughout my life frame and through my mother's life frame leading into this occurrence.
With the right care team behind her.
Wow. Uh-huh.
And for her, it's a Medicare plan with the AARP name. I hope I can keep up.
The Right Plan Promise, only from United Healthcare. Get help finding your plan at uhc.com/Medicare.
So my whole thing is that if there are automobiles of any kind that have any kind of EPA emissions coming off their tailpipe, and if somebody has a religious restriction, cultural restriction, or something else about keeping a dry lifestyle by morality police and the vice, it seems really difficult to keep that standard of livelihood and expectation if there is this unannounced distillery that is just spreading alcohol vapor all day long. It's like the city that never sleeps. And it's just being thrown out in the air. And how do you move away from it? Where's the money to do that? Where's the opportunity to do that? It's like you're just trapped here. And then it becomes a way of living, a way of getting around. There are just more sales, more, and they keep throwing money at the problem. But I'm not receiving any benefit or any money. Then I heard this morning they're talking about fines, refinery. I'm like, is that where they keep taxing? Is that the Emirates in order to pay the bills for the health, for the insurance company? Because now the taxes of that. But this is taxation without representation. Whole nother category. Yeah, National Treasure's been thinking about things and how she's been hurt by several features that I don't hear the large conversation talking about. Climate change, if it's heating up the atmosphere, the chemicals are dangerous to the humans and to the environment globally. it should be really easy to fix. But I know there's a lot of money tied to it, a lot of now the piranhas are out and it's like raw meat in the riverbed. I mean, that's how I see humans at this point. Not necessarily when I go out in my local area. I try to think of them as the way God created them and the way that their parents, when they had them, if their parents loved them, should have treated them. Like, really, like, in the large Christian way of teaching about Mary and about Jesus and about how Mary loved Jesus. And you want someone like that to care for your child if they're responsible for something that has to do with your child's health. That's kind of how I try to conduct myself. But I also live in the real world where I've been brutally beaten, mutilated, and chemically intoxified by injection just out in my everyday whatever, and taken down in some event that I can't even put into words, but I know there were other first responders on the field that I would assume would have made a report on my behalf. But I have no idea who they are or how to access them in order to do whatever it is that I need to do in a life frame. All right, here's the piece about the NFL.
Let's get into this. Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa will return to action against the Steelers this Sunday. You'll recall 3 weeks ago, a brutal hit sent him to the hospital during a game against the Cincinnati Bengals and
Okay, so waking up on Santarelli's front lawn, not knowing how I got there, not knowing why it happened the way that it happened, being in St. Dominic's, being in Oyster Bay, being near Ransom Beach by the Roosevelt estate, not knowing anything about President Roosevelt, just that he existed. All of the presidents were white. All of them, to the family, were like gods because they're governors of the federal family and looks over the state family and the estate. So as far, they're just, if they no longer are living and walking, them and their ancestors are theoretically top priority. They just are. They're what's left in the field tending to the family tree as like ancestors, shepherds, perhaps. I don't know, you say thanes of the woodlands. It's our area of responsibility. At least historically it has been, and there should be no reason why as caretakers we're not in the future of where we arrived. So I don't know past family junk that went on. Like, was Nixon's family better than Bush's family? Was there some secret partnership? I have no idea. I grew up in a glen. I'm a national treasure. That's all I know. There's a last czar and a last supper. Really important in my area of family. So this looks like EMS to me in the Oyster Bay area for whatever happened that night when I was a teenager. I looking something like this, although the skin color's different. And then them trying to wake me out of whatever it was that was going on, that I was trying, they would go off and talk on the side, and then they'd come over and they would try to talk to me. I had no idea what was going on. But it was real serious. That's all I know. And then it was never talked about again after that. I don't know how it was handled. I don't know by who or by whom it was handled. But that's when we got the visit from the, what they referred to as, because I didn't know the words for it, almost like the president of the Catholic Church. Like if family, like the president in the White House being the most important person in United States of America, it's their version, but in the Catholic Church, came to visit our school. That was like unheard of. That was like, we're really important people. Um, so that was around whatever. Um, and so then I listened to this man get up. And now, if he didn't have such an illustrious career of being in an arena and doctors that followed him, I didn't even have a follow-up doctor's appointment. Nothing. Talk about how are you mishandling the nation's treasure and the nation's treasury as far as females that are going to have children and going to be really important to other family members wherever they should be at anything local, regional, or global. And how are you handling the national treasures that are entrusted in your local care, in your local gardening area for children and the family tree? And that's tied to, no less, the meal plan, the amount of security and funding you get, and how everything is shaped in the area for pruning. So I'm thinking to myself, I know my situation. It's like we went from this to I got up. They put me in the back seat of Lyndon Lewis's car, and it was nighttime. It was daytime when I got attacked. We'll call it an attack. And then it was nighttime when I was put in the back of Linda and Lewis's car and driven home, and then put to bed and never spoken of again. And then there was no follow-up that I'm aware of. Just some quiet, large signals for whatever is whatever. And so I'm thinking to myself, could you imagine if this sports person just gets taken off the field, they then relocate him in some trailer in some state that maybe doesn't have, like, whatever, and put him back to living on a regular, ordinary person's salary and just walking away from him. That's pretty much how my national treasure position has been honored in this life frame, which is signals of really serious stuff going on at I don't know what level, and I don't know for what purpose. But you'll see him. He'll get up. He still has a career. He's still able to play. He talks about it.
And led the NFL to change its response to head injuries. Yesterday, he spoke to reporters for the first time about his injury.
There was a point where I was unconscious, so I couldn't, really tell what was going on.
After this hit, Tua Tagovailoa.
What's really scary is I've had more than one hit. Call it a sting operation. Yeah, I felt the sting once and then went down. But I've been attacked more than that. Just, again, in this type of crime, when this is a crime, when it happens the way that it happened to me, I mean, this isn't easy to put up there for public acknowledgement of something else in a paradox. But it has real significance symbolically and in my real life frame to visually tie the trauma, but in a less traumatic way. So this way we're not traumatizing, I don't know what, the people that don't or haven't experienced this.
Laid motionless on the ground for more than 7 minutes. During a press conference yesterday, Tagovailoa admits his memory from that night remains fuzzy.
I remember the entire night up to the point where I got tackled. But yeah, after I got tackled, I don't remember much from there. Getting carted off, I don't remember that.
It was the second severe hit for Tagovailoa in as many games. Against the Buffalo Bills 5 days earlier, he lost his balance after hitting his head on the turf. He was controversially cleared to return in the second half.
That's not a good sign when you see him wobble like that.
Those incidents forced the NFL to update its concussion protocols to include ataxia, meaning if a player shows any signs of instability after a hit, They will not be allowed back into the game.
And I find it interesting he's wearing the number 1. So, again, I don't know why this natural event happened in the way that it happened. I'm just reading the signs from my own search of God, country, and family because I had teenage event, not a game, not in an arena. There was no provocation. Like he has provocation, like he plays football. It's part of their game. I was not provocating or playing a game. I don't even know how I got from the school. I think we walked somewhere. Did someone's dad's parent? Maybe my dad? I don't remember. I think I had to call my dad. My dad had to drive me somewhere to meet up with some people. I think that's how it happened. And then I did. And then I got attacked. I think that's how it went because I don't know how I would have gotten from the school to the village of Oyster Bay. Because it wasn't something that I could have walked. It wasn't like walking from Cold Spring Harbor to his office. I mean, his office was always wherever I was. It was 3 Harbor Road when we were at Glenway, when we were in the Glen. And then it moved. I was still in the Glen. And then we moved to the Oyster Bay. He moved CBDA, CBDA, and PRO to Oyster Bay in the same time frame. So he was close to me in case I needed anything. So that's what's on the morning news. And what's just logically, I'm like, if I'm having this almost hemorrhagic event of it's large, to me, it looks like large volume blood loss in these weird time effects, but it's substantial throughout the night and even still now. And yesterday they gave me a metric of my blood volume was at 13. But what's confusing for me is how was it 13 with me having this level of event? And what's the difference? Like, how did I go from 13 points yesterday he said it was 13.7. How did I go from 13.7 to a volume of 5.9 in the hospital needing 2 units of blood when this is the level of blood loss that I experienced monthly for a while? Again, like that, like when do you have enough blood? When are you not having enough blood? Is there something that's going on, like bump in the night when I mean, again, they've been off to the races for a long time, it feels like, between the CBS, the UBS, and whatever's going on at FBI's Most Wanted for DVR. One of the locals mentioned yesterday, like just in a circle, standing off to the side and like joking about it. Not quite sure what that has to do with either. Because again, it's part of the service that Verizon charges Lewis for on a monthly bill that he pays, and other locals have this service as well. It's some kind of package that they do with this allowance of free speech and communication. I mean, it's what the locals are socially accepting, or they socially accepted as a format of communication. I'm just trying to do my best to figure out what is needed of me as caretaker and Thane and a national treasure. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way universe, galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.